mute us here. So
It's a great picture.
oh, that is. Where'd that come from?
It's a ad from yeah, actually, yeah.
I came in.
Having sound issues. Like a shirt.
Isn't that fun?
I'm on now. Yeah, that's good.
So the Commodore wanted us to anchor down some more. And I guess we could get some
In my Bible.
alternative for the dates.
We could do Oasis soon.
Yeah. There's a link in the on my phone.
Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. And knowing my tendency to be somewhat long-winded at times, I think the earlier we start, the better. I would like to say, first of all, thank you to Guy Griffith and to Westminster for once again asking me to come back and present a little bit of what I taught at MBA for 40 years, which is a little bit of art history, and as well as art. What a great job that was for that period of time. I will tell you that this may be one of the strangest Advent Sunday schools that you have been to. And at first I thought, there are no angels that necessarily are flying around. We're not talking about things that are familiar on all the Christmas cards that you get. But we're going to talk about the art of Pieter Bruegel today. Now, you need to understand Bruegel is the founder of a large family of artists. So you've got Pieter Bruegel the younger, you have Jan Bruegel. We're not messing with any of that today. We're just assuming that since all of them learned how to paint and their art from their father, that there are close similarities between the two. I also chose it because I heard that Guy is offering a trip to the Low Countries, and certainly when you start with Antwerp, which was one of the best. Oh, did I change it already? One of the best locations for the art of this period. It is a natural. I will tell you that one of the things that kept coming back to, and I'll tell you to begin with, that the eighth Psalm and Pieter Bruegel are two of my favorites. So that you basically are getting a lot of me, and hopefully you will get a lot more out of it than that. The more I thought about it, and the more I kept playing with this theme, that question that the psalmist asks, what is man that you're mindful of, and mortals that you care for them, kept coming back and back and back. You know, we live in an age that everybody has described as a very polarized society. Republicans, Democrats, and city, county, no matter how you slice it, elite and, and non-elite. Bruegel gives us a view of the world in which that schism was far more pronounced, and that is the 2 centuries of war of religion. And once you start dealing with wars of religion, you can die fairly quickly. And so it conjures up images oftentimes of places like Ukraine and Gaza and Sudan and other areas of warfare. For who is it that suffers the most? It's the poor, it's the everyone. It is the individual. One of the reasons that I love Bruegel is the fact that what he focuses on, as opposed to
Over here.
all of these, which one is, all these, I keep changing, all these images on the right, is that he does not deal with the ideal man. And by the way, I'm sorry, the man is going to be used probably more often than it probably should be, but it's sometimes hard to supplement. So I apologize ahead of time. Instead, what Bruegel focuses on is the everyday man, the one who is the sort of the lowest on the, not necessarily the lowest, but the one on the totem pole who is somewhere on that scale. He certainly is not Michelangelo's ideal Vitruvian man. You can notice in the center here, the Limburg brothers' ideal figure is noted by the astrological signs that are associated with different parts of the body, and even medieval, where you see there's sort of a geometric kind of pattern to all of the images. Instead, what you're looking at is the everyday man. This is actually a small scene, and the everyman actually was a dramatic presentation. I mean, it was a common theme among the humanists of the age, and in a way, Bruegel gives us a good introduction to that. You see this really fairly chaotic scene that looks more like a pillaging and rummaging than it is anything else. You'll notice that with the figure in the background here, nobody knows himself. This is the good start. And then you'll notice Elk is written on the hem of a number of these figures, which is that of every man. Now, the translation that is in bold here, I've read it over and over and over again. I can't tell you how little sense it really makes, other than the fact that this one pulls, that one pulls, all have the same love of possession. And I think basically the implication here is that you never find yourself in worldly things, that there has to be something greater than you. Bruegel is a real enigmatic figure. We don't know much about him. He does not leave much of a written record. We know when he joined the guild in Antwerp. We do know in the 1550s he traveled for 3 years to Italy, and basically the advanced painting degree, where he not only studied the works of the likes of Raphael, Michelangelo, and others, but also was absolutely enamored with nature. And I think if there is anything that his, quote, biographer once stated, that as Bruegel crossed the Alps, he ate up all of the views and the mountains and the scenes that he saw, and then came back and spewed them all out, repeating what he had seen. And nature is going to be one of the major keys here. Before we get started, I do want to read Psalm 8. That's good. Yeah, that's it. We can quit. This is from the New Oxford Annotated Bible, and I will tell you that having a father who is a Presbyterian minister, Sunday mornings was always met with a Bible verse, a song, a prayer and a song. And I must admit, this is one of those prayers that we knew by heart. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouths of babes and infants, you have founded a bulwark because of your foes, to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look to the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name. Several things I do want to point out about this passage that I think comes through in Bruegel's work is that the role of the divine here is described as the creator. He is the master creator overall. I also like the idea that his bulwark, if you would, his strength derives from children, from infants and babes, those who have the least voice. Also, I think the psalmist, rightly so, talks about the fact that God is not somewhere remotely posited up into some kind of celestial sphere. I never could have figured out why the fear of God was there. But at any rate, a sphere. When I look at the heavens and the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, he talks about the observation of that nature. The other thing that I truly find fascinating is that not only does he raise the question of what is mankind, but also, and mortals was actually substituted in the King James Version, which is obviously the version that I learned, was the notion of the Son of Man. And you get to Isaiah and you get to the kind of an apocalyptic kind of concept here that I think to some extent may come true in Bruegel's work. But I do think, and also I love the listing of all the animals on the planet and then the things that pass through the paths of the sea. That's sort of the etc. Whatever I'm left out, that's covered there. So he comes back and begins a large series, or continues a large series of drawings, the first of which are the large landscapes. And what you'll notice about it is that it has an incredible wealth of detail. It has an incredible wealth of an awareness of the movement into space. Nothing's kind of tilted at all. There is a very high horizon. And you'll notice, and I think interestingly enough, that the main feature of this, which is St. Jerome in the wilderness, is hidden. I mean, he's not smack dab in the middle of it and waiting for us then to kind of figure out what's going on around him. And you get the impression from the very beginning that we're looking at nature. And this looking is extremely important. One of the things that I find fascinating about Bruegel, and I don't think you're going to, obviously you're not going to Vienna, but if you ever make it to Vienna, The Kunsthistorica is a fabulous institution because there's one room that contains upwards of 10 to 12 Bruegels. And so my favorite thing to do in this is to come in, sit down and observe one side until the room fills, and then leave and go see the rest of the museum, come back, choose another side, and so on and so forth. The only problem with that is that to see Bruegel, you really need to see it up close. And we will look at a number of these works as we go on. All right, we're going to have a little experiment today. This is probably the first snowstorm ever painted in Western art. But what I would like for you to do is to take a minute. I'm just going to be quiet. And I would like for you to look, and I would like for you to ask yourself a question. What strikes your eye first? What do you think is the most important? And then why do you think that? And I will tell you, there's no right answer. And I'm not sitting here trying to trick anybody or trying to, we'll talk about foolishness later, but this is not a test on that. If you've seen it before. Okay, yes. This, this one? Good. Yes. Yeah, you get the feeling that you are actually in the midst of that environment. What else? Yes, sir. Well, that was Anna in Washington fighting a nor'easter. But you can imagine, I mean, they don't have little puffy black coats that they wrap up in. They're, they are, it is cold to the bone. Yes, sir. Right there. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. I can't get out. I can't get out. All right. Well, let me move on. And this is the adoration of the Magi. And, you think of all the images that you've seen over the centuries, not our centuries, but images from the centuries of a adoration of the Magi. Notice this, not only is it not front and center, it's barely on the canvas, which gives you the idea that when you look at Bruegel, you cannot ignore the edges. As a matter of fact, Pieter Bruegel the Elder was known as Pieter Bruegel the Droll, and drolleries actually were scribblings that were made in the margins of manuscripts. And so that the idea of being on the margin is not necessarily being unimportant. I love the mother leaning over the wall, watching her kid. Don't go backwards, please. It's just, and then look at this building. The roof's fallen in. It's snowing inside. Now, whether it's a palace or a church is anybody's question, but given the time in which we're talking about, could very well have been a church that either at one point in time, a Catholic church probably to begin with, that the Protestants may have taken over, or vice versa. And you talk about the idea of ruin. The other thing that I think is fascinating here is ask yourself the question, Bruegel gives us the present view, his here and now. Were Jesus born today? Where would he be born? In Nashville. And how would we know? Because I think part of what you're looking at here is that there's even a guy sitting still cutting sticks to throw on the fire that is oblivious to the fact that right behind him is the Christ child. Yeah, there's actually a lean-to with a fire going on here. The building is actually propped up. And then you've got these figures. It's almost like a wind tunnel going through the town. There are even armed guards. They're military figures out at the very back of this work. No camels, but what have you. I will show you these two works just to say that Bruegel had two major influences. One was his Italianate influences. So one is not to be lost in the fact, it's very easy to kind of romanticize Bruegel's work. His work lends itself to that kind of, oh, look how nice things were back then, blah, blah, blah. No, and he uses more of a classical composition to his work. Obviously, the Tower of Babel was founded on the notions of seeing the Colosseum for the first time. You also see influences of Hieronymus Bosch. And Bosch painted at the turn of the century, from the 15th into the 16th century. His paintings were wildly or enthusiastically sought after. And you can imagine them, basically what they were was paintings that dealt primarily with virtues and vices. So you get the two of these. This work, by the way, the Temptation of St. Anthony actually was in Vienna at one point in time. I think it may still be there. No, it's in Brussels. But so you can see that when you go to Brussels. But what absolutely astounds me is the fact that Bruegel is painting at the same time that Michelangelo is still working. Michelangelo dies in 1564 working on the Rondinini Pietà in Milan. And just to put the two of those together is sort of an adjustment to imagine how on earth this would happen. All right. I guess to be kind of fun now. This is some of his earlier work, and it has some of the organization of the large landscape. You've got a massive plot of land that you're looking at, a town square. These are known as the Wemmel paintings. Wemmel meaning teeming with details. I always like to think about it as being the thesaurus or the encyclopedia of children's games. And it has always astounded me to look and to see, anything from somersaults to crack the whip to spinning tops to standing on stilts, to climbing trees, to playing with dolls. But it's interesting that these series were thought of as a beginning series on the ages of mankind. So you start with the children. It goes back to Psalm 8 again. You're dealing with the fact that there is a kind of naivete to the games that they play, although they do tend to emulate their adults. And I think that in and of itself is quite extraordinary. Now, I don't know how well you can see any of this, but just to go through, there are over, I think, 90 games that have been described here. And some of them, here's a playing baptismal procession, hobby horse, tug of war. They're all things that, this is what you did before the internet. So Now, whether or not these have any kind of a humanist background to them, as one being more Catholic or one Protestant. And it's really interesting. One of the things you get in Bruegel is at the moment you label somebody or stereotype somebody, you depersonalize them. So the idea of calling somebody Protestant when you had no real identification of what a Protestant was other than not a Catholic, or maybe from a Catholic standpoint, a heretic. And then even within Catholicism, you had a whole host of range of acceptance of faith and of observance. In addition to that one, you also have Netherlands. Yes, sir. Well, let me see. Well, what he's trying to do. What he's trying to do is to get over to the river, so he can jump in and have a little floaty to keep him from sinking down. No, you got to go with what you got. I mean, there's no question about that. Netherlandish tales, and I will tell you, there's nothing sort of sterilized about Bruegel's vision. I mean, I love the fact that the globe is represented twice. It's here and it's upside down. And there's actually a guy who is outside of a window crapping on it, which may very well be a sentiment of what he felt. Also, you have a guy down here who does not look like a laborer or anyone other than someone of great position, who has the world turned up right side up and is spinning it on his finger. Okay. You've got big fish eat little fish, which is, there was a wonderful New Yorker cartoon that I had in my classroom for years that had the big fish going, the world is fair, little fish going, the world is kind of fair sometimes. And the last one was the little fish that said the world is not fair. So that when I had students come up and ask me, I don't think this is just really not fair. I said, well, here, look at this. So again, just trying to give some sort of a handle of what some of these I'd say maybe 4 by 5. So I mean, it is not huge at all. Obviously, you're looking here at the world of adults, midlife. I love the idea here that to shoot a second arrow to find the first. But the thing of it is, these are common proverbs. These are things that we know. One of the ways in which sort of some of these proverbs were translated ultimately into prints was this drawing of big fish eat little fish. And obviously the implication here has little to do with fishing and everything to do with living. And it is a question that anyone that is small in stature had better beware. Some say that the image itself may very well have been conjured up by a whale that was beached on the shore. But indeed, it's sort of an endless round of big devouring little. And then you have the battle between Carnival and Lent, which may be more or less at what Bruegel is kind of getting to here. The left-hand side being more, quote, Protestant. It takes place in front of an inn. Well, rats. Of an inn. Well, there we go. Of an inn. You'll notice that down below there is Carnival himself, who some say may look very much like Luther. He's a rather corpulent fellow. He is sitting on a jug of wine, a keg of wine. All of his followers are masked, and you get plenty of singing and joy. And then on the other hand, on the other side, you get Lent. And a nun that is barely able to sit in a straight back chair. She has a bread turner or whatever paddle for the two little fish. And then you see the pretzels and the waffles. You see the line of folks coming out of the church giving alms to the poor. But it's interesting to note that in the midst of all of this, again, only a few are really paying attention to it, that everybody else seems to be going about their way. One of the last of these images is that of the triumph of death. And one of the things that you realize in the everyman play is the fact that no matter what pilgrimage or what journey you are on, that there is a finality to that journey. It is harrowing in the sense that you have both the rich, the king with the skeleton going through all of his gold. You have the forbearance of youth that one would dare to try to stand up against this army of skeletons. You play backgammon. Two lovers here that seem to be oblivious to everything that's going on around. And then, despite the executions, the juries, the rider of death, to me, the most frightening thing is this. It almost looks like a rabbit trap, but you'll notice on the inside of the door, it has that Spanish cross. And all I can think of every time I look at this are the boxcars from World War II. And I don't think it is a bad comparison to really think of that, because they're just being herded into, there's no rhyme, no reason at this point in time. All right, well, I think it's interesting that we start out the series on the seasons with a gloomy day, but didn't have anything to do with the previous slide. The major season, the major series that Bruegel does is a series on the seasons. Now, this is not an unusual topic. The idea of the change in seasons and the labors of the months is a very familiar subject, going all the way back to the medieval times. But what you find here is that rather than having 12 different scenes, he creates 6 scenes based on not necessarily the work that the workers do, but on the landscape itself. Its light, its feel. I mean, how many of you in the fall have taken a moment at some point in time to step out and go, the light is really different now than it has been in the summer. Still no rain, but hey. But you're looking primarily at that sense of a global view, but he brings that view closer to us, so that we're not just simply looking at a sort of an ant farm in the distance. This was possibly commissioned by a Netherlandish tax collector whose name I am not about to try to pronounce, but he owned 6 of them, of which 5 have managed to remain. 3 of them are in Vienna, one's in Prague, and one is at the Met in New York. It is an absolutely stunning description of the world. This is the gloomy day, which is actually February and March. I always thought that there was probably no part of the season where weather was more unpredictable than either February or March. You didn't know what it was going to be. Here you have them trimming trees in preparation for the spring, as well as providing wood for for the carnival. But you'll notice in the background that what you're looking at is the flood, ships that are destroyed. And if I could get you can't really see it all that well, and you'll notice the fact that it is not nighttime here. I mean, a storm is coming, but there is a flood. You can see the flood that has broken the dike and has actually overwhelmed the landscape back here. And none of the workers in the foreground are aware of that. I think it's kind of interesting too that you have a young couple here with a little child and a lantern. The lantern doesn't seem to do much of anything, but everybody is intent on what they are doing. This is the hay harvest. April and May are the 2 months that are missing, whatever that scene may have been. And I have a feeling it would have been a description of springtime. And I can only imagine how glorious that would have been. This is June and July. And what you're looking at again are the fields of plenty. And again, it's not just a question of having a good crop. This is the question of your survival. And it is talking about the bounty of the world itself. And I want you to note the fact that this windmill here is actually this. This is actually over here. And then you can see almost all the way to the horizon to city after city. And you get the impression that there's a kind of boundlessness to this landscape. I also love the fact that there seems to be, I have fat fingers. One young lady who is peering almost towards us, whereas there's an older woman behind her and maybe a younger one before on her other side. But you get a sense that this is part of the daily routine. Used to think this was a hay harvest too, but it's a corn harvest. This is at the Metropolitan in New York, and I will make a beeline here just to sit in front of this one for a while. 10 minutes, okay. At any rate, what you're looking at is that same kind of thing. But notice the fact that you've got, all the focus here is not just on the workers, but also on the fact that you have a little picnic happening here, as well as a game of what have you taking place in the background. The return of the herd is from October and November, where the herds are taken up into the higher reaches. Again, it kind of has that gloomy kind of feel to it. Yes. Yes, I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah, you don't see it. You don't see it that much today, and I can't really think of where the it's like Florence being very hilly. You've got the Apennines behind it, but I can't think of what mountain spaces would have been. But this was but I do think one of the things is, and it may be, it does seem to be repetitive through all of them. So it may just be this to me is as Netherlandish as you get. This is the return of the hunters, and I will tell you that have you ever been out on one of the few times that it snowed more than a half inch, and you're chomping through the woods, and the snow has muffled everything, and you can just hear sounds from miles away. And the cold is somewhat overwhelming. And I think that's exactly what Bruegel is attempting to do here. This group of hunters have gone out. They have come back with one fox that they have found. There are rabbit tracks in front of them. On the left is the Limburg brothers, February. And that is a good example of the labors of the month, where everybody is doing a more or less kind of stereotyped kind of thing. But you find that this, you just get the feeling that this is really happening in front of you. Huh? It always has looked that way. It has looked that way to me. Yes. Also, I think this one is fascinating in the sense that the magpie flying tends to be somewhat of an omen. And there is a sense that a little ice age in 1565 began as in this part of Europe, so that the more cold winters were on the way. And then you have, and this I find absolutely fascinating. I know you have to trust me on this one. There's a house in the background. Well, there you go. There's a house in the background where you see not just smoke coming through, but there's fire actually coming out of the chimney. And you actually see somebody climbing a ladder to help with putting out that fire. I mean, well, it's part of life. And then you have curling, you have top spinning, all kinds of other activities. Probably the two scenes that are known the most to Bruegel are the peasant wedding and the peasant dance. Here, notice what's happened. The figures now take on a monumental kind of presence. We're not talking about tiny little figures running around in the background. And this actually is taking place in a hay barn. You see the lovely bride in the back here, surrounded by her parents. There's probably the sheriff or some other county official there, along with a monk. There is plenty of food. This child is making sure that none of it is going to waste. And there's plenty of drink. And quite clearly, the further back you get, probably the more boisterous you get. And then here in the peasant dance, this is a Kermis or a saint day. Well, I don't think you really experience that with that kind of dancing and rollicking. Check out the bagpipe player. He's sitting here doing his best to carry a tune. And this poor guy who is so drunk, he can barely even, is right in his face, blowing his breath on him, and the face of the bagpipe player is just going, ugh. And then in the background, you'll see there's a fight beginning to take hold. And you notice this guy has lost less interest in this madam that he is escorting to the dance floor, if you would, than what's happening over here. And then, of course, you have a PDA in the background, which, I don't know about that. But there is a figure as a jester back in this area. There's a woman pulling a man into a house. I mean, yes, it all is part and parcel. You know, I'm going to skip this. I know I'm kind of running out of time. This is the 5 minutes. Okay, that's all right. One of the fantasies that runs through Bruegel's work and work before this is the idea of a land where even better than paradise. This is the land of cocaine. And it is a space, it is a place west of Spain as it starts. Sebastian Brandt in his Ship of Fools would write about it. But you'll notice the fact that everybody saw My Brother, Who Art Thou, Where Art Thou? Remember the big rock candy mountain? This is it. I mean, the cigarette trees and the alcohol streams and the bulldogs with rubber teeth. I mean, here you have a cleric, a farmer, and a knight all pretty much passed out. He's not gone because the wine is still dripping out of the jug here. This knight waiting for a bird to fly into his mouth, and then pigs with knives already. No work, but all luxury. Probably this work was one of the last that he did. He did it the year before he died. It's called The Blind Leading the Blind. And I know of no composition and no work that is more, to me, more powerful. And it's interesting to note that with Bruegel, he does not play down figures that are handicapped. I mean, he doesn't poke fun at them per se. I mean, they are every bit as human as we are. And you'll notice that in this particular work, you have one man who has already fallen into the ditch. And you think of the proverb, the blind leading the blind will end up in the ditch. And you'll notice this guy is already falling with him. This one, although no eyes, is sort of aware of the fact that, uh-oh, something's happening. And again, you get here, what's the problem? And then these two people in the back, they're clueless. Their destruction will come soon enough. You'll notice that they're musicians, or at least there are musical instruments that are carried by the first one, but it's all done against the background of a church. This work by Sargent actually was at the Frist Museum, a decade ago maybe, the World War I. But I can't help but think of the impending journey from 1569 to this one in 1918. All right, one of the reasons I wanted to get to this, finish on this, is that, do anybody know what this is? It's an absolutely wonderful work. And if you look at it very carefully, just like the first slide that I showed you of the Adoration of the Magi, the subject itself is almost indistinguishable. The subject itself revolves around this. It's the fall of Icarus. The idea that you flew too close to the sun, boom, you're gone. W.H. Auden wrote an absolutely beautiful poem about this, and I'm going to try to read it. After suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters, how well they understood its human position, how it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. How, when the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous birth, there always must be children who did not specifically want it to happen. Skating on the pond at the edge of the wood, they never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course. Where the dogs, anyhow, in a corner, some untidy spot, where the dogs go on with their doggy life and the torturer's horse scratches its innocence behind on a tree. This is the census in Bethlehem, and it would have been there when Auden saw it, and you get the sense of the figures that are going on their way, the figure opening the door, the kids on the pond at the edge of the woods. And then this work also is in Vienna. The one in London has been sanitized, painted over. This one has not. This is the massacre of the innocents that Auden was talking about the martyrdom must run its course. And what you see when you start looking is that no matter in what kind of conflict, the ones who are going to suffer the most have the least. So you have the child, you have the spearing of the children here, the carrying away of the child, and the grief of the mothers and the pleading of the fathers for no reason other than the fact that they happen to live there. And you can't help but see within the guards that kind of the German mercenaries as well as that of the Spanish. In Bruegel's Icarus, for instance, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the distance, from the disaster. The plowman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. The sun shone as it had on the white legs disappearing into the green water, and the expensive, delicate ship that must have seen something amazing, a boy falling out of the sky, had somewhere to go on to and sailed calmly on. I will leave you with just this snapshot of screenshot. If you ever have 20 minutes, one of the best sections of the New York Times that has been over the years is one called The Close Read. This one was taken primarily from a poem and a painting. But there are the Durer and any number of other artists and authors and so forth are represented there. So I'll let you sail calmly on and say thank you very much for being here. And it was a real joy and treat to share this with you. Thank you.